Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss the long-feared collapse of BritishVolt, seen as the post-Brexit lifeline for car manufacturing in the UK, and Rishi Sunak's dismal response when he was asked about it in PMQs yesterday. Either the Tories don't understand the consequence of this, or they're still listening to Patrick Minford and are deliberately running down manufacturing in Britain. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, slightly unrelated, Davos is back on in Switzerland. The UK is being represented on the world stage by Keir Starmer. As neither Sunak nor his Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, are going. Not the first time Sunak's pulled out of a major international event. In fact, he's actually hiding from the world stage. But as part of Starmer's pitch anyway at Davos on reuniting the UK with the world, he has said, if we're not careful, in 20 years' time, we'll be importing all our cars and steel. Well, that vision just got a little bit closer yesterday with the news that BritishVolt has collapsed. This company was to spearhead our production of cells for electric cars and is now, if you'll pardon the expression, pulling the plug. First of all, why is it important? Well, now that we are outside of the single market, we can only export goods to the EU if we can meet rules of origin standards. That essentially means that enough of the products can be deemed to have been produced, including its constituent parts, in the UK. It's basically a rule that stops covert selling into the EU from a market without an agreement using the UK as a Trojan horse. In other words, it stops a company somewhere else that doesn't have an agreement, a no tariff agreement with the EU, manufacturing all the components for something themselves, sending them over to a factory in Britain to assemble them and then sell it to the EU tariff-free. No, that's not going to fly. But it is a problem because it limits what materials and components can be imported for the manufacturing process in Britain if we are to sell competitively to the EU. At least half of it has to be deemed as coming from Britain. Bear in mind that our competitiveness has already taken a knock because of all the paperwork now required, including that which proves that the goods meet rules of origin. Now, just as a little aside, this general issue is a particular inefficiency with leaving the single market, because what it means is in order to sell goods tariff-free to the EU, we basically have to control at least half of all the production here. That is much less efficient because it means we need to build this component and this component and this component all in the same place instead of being able to spread it around the continent. But anyway, also don't imagine the EU would go easy on the tariffs for cars because remember, their three largest economies are all car manufacturers themselves. They care about it and they want to maintain their own competitiveness over Britain. We are now a competitor. Choosing to leave the EU made us a competitor of the EU. And the future of car manufacture right now is electric, of course. You know, if we cannot produce our own cells, we might as well forget it. If we were in the single market, there would not be a problem importing cells from, say, Germany, where Tesla's building their new plant, assembling the cars here, and then selling them to countries around the single market. No hassle or expense. In fact, all the components could be manufactured in other countries around the EU. And we could just assemble them in Britain and then sell them wherever around the EU. No problem. No issue. But this collapse of BritishVolt is a problem because it suggests that there is no commercial way to produce our own cells at this time. But without that facility, and others like it, there is no point in manufacturers setting up plants in Britain for electric cars because it will cost too much to sell them outside of Britain. They might as well go to France. When Sunak was asked about this collapse, he said that he wouldn't commit public money without private investment alongside it, but that the private investment was not there. This is not the defence he thinks it is. In fact, he is highlighting a huge weakness with Brexit. Brexit has meant a big drop in investment in the UK from both foreign and domestic companies. You know, this has been the case since the referendum. You know, investors knew, they could see the writing on the wall. They didn't need to see what life was like outside the single market. They knew what was going to happen immediately. And there are two reasons for this. The first is uncertainty. In the 6 years since the referendum, it's nearly 7 years now, there has never been a roadmap for Brexit, and there still isn't one. There isn't a plan. The government are unable to publish their blueprint for a post-Brexit Britain, including trading arrangements, regulations, other vital information needed by investors in order to assess business plans. In fact, their grand plan right now is to abolish thousands of rules and regulations without any idea how this impacts business for no other reason that they're shared with the EU. That ramps up the uncertainty even more. No consideration as to whether the rules are beneficial or if removing them will panic investors. Second, we have restricted access to the European market. In fact, because it's harder to export from Britain to the EU than it is from the EU to Britain. If you want to sell to both markets, it's almost always better to establish yourself in an EU country because you'll have an easier time selling from the EU to Britain than you will from Britain to the EU. So the only investment that Britain's really attracting is that which only needs to take advantage of the British market or where Brexit didn't provide a major barrier to exports elsewhere. Now, these businesses exist, so it's not like investment has disappeared completely, but it is much lower than the pre-Brexit trajectory. But Brexiteers are desperate to try and deny this. Fortunately for them, most people don't read business articles, so they're not going to see graphs like this. And whenever there is a major investment in Britain, they shine a spotlight on it in order to try and go, doubt is a row, look, we've got some investment, look, well done. BritishVolt was one such investment they were crowing about. Yeah, look, we're gonna be riding the crest of the wave of the electric car revolution. Look at this factory. Boris Johnson was all over it. Marvellous, marvellous, marvellous. Couldn't be done without Brexit. A company to build cells for electric vehicles to power our way through the motoring revolution. Built in the northeast, where a lot of car manufacturing jobs have been lost thanks to Brexit. Essentially, we need factories to produce cells for electric cars. If they are not commercially viable, we need to ask, why are they not commercially viable? They are commercially viable in other countries. Electric cars are seen as the future. Factories producing cells for them are popping up everywhere. Why not here? Why is it not commercially viable here? And if Brexit makes them tricky to develop commercially at this time, then if the government really believes in Brexit, should they not be kickstarting the process with a nationalised producer? I mean, they didn't mind adopting a bit of socialism to get them through the first year of COVID with their furlough scheme, did they? Why not to cover for Brexit? Is it because they're comfortable with manufacturing collapse? I've mentioned a few times in the past that when Thatcher-era economic advisor Patrick Minford was discussing Brexit with Tory ministers some years ago now, in David Cameron's days, he said that if you leave the single market, of course, it would mean you'll have to run down the car manufacturing industry, just as Thatcher's government ran down coal and steel in the 80s. He further added that it would be the right policy to adopt. Now, if the current Tories are still heeding this alleged wisdom, makes you wonder what sort of vision they see for Britain. Deliberately running down our public services, deliberately running down British farming, deliberately running down manufacture. What's going to be left? What are we going to produce? It's all right saying we're mostly a service-driven economy. We can't actually afford to chop our goods production out of the equation, even if it's in the minority. I mean, look at how bad things have got after a 5.5% Brexit hits to our GDP. Imagine what 25% hit would do. It's worth considering just what this means as well. See, the news is of most of the 300 employees being made redundant next week, next Tuesday, I believe. But how many other jobs are at risk? There are people employed in the wider supply chain who may now not be needed. And what are future jobs? This is supposed to be the start of an electric car revolution, should be generating good quality jobs for the future. But if the Tories kill it off with their Brexit before it's even begun, then those good quality jobs with decent pay will turn into what? What's the growth industry we're getting with Brexit, which will replace those lost jobs? There isn't one. So the people who would have had those jobs will now have to make do with the crap jobs on low pay that we're currently short of workers for. Not sure the Tories are unhappy with that outcome either. And it has to be said that the places most affected by this Brexit blow are the same places who voted strongly to leave in 2016 and then again by voting Tory in 2019. I do keep saying many will not have, and they are going to suffer just the same. I'm not using this as a well, it serves you right moment, but it is curious that the parts of the country which voted most strongly in favour of leave tend to be the ones suffering the most economic damage as a result of it. More turkeys voting for Christmas. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time. I'll see you later.